Welcome to Reveal's 2020 webinar series, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kelly, and I'll be your host for this morning's roundtable discussion. This year's webinar series provides insights on how to best leverage your SAP asset as it relates to your business and how each functional area will be affected by S/4HANA. Today, we set the stage for turning SAP into an asset by utilizing it effectively in sales and operations planning and IBP. Before we get started with today's roundtable discussion, let's discuss how this is going to proceed. This discussion will last approximately 30 to 45 minutes, followed by a question and answer period at the end. Please capture your questions in the question or chat section. Finally, this discussion will be recorded and will be available on Reveal's website later today. At this point in time, I would like to introduce you to today's roundtable members. Christy Bain, an advisor here at Reveal, has 20 plus years of practical integrated supply chain management experience across a variety of industries. She specializes in organizational change management, decision support solutions, and integrated business planning for supply chains of all shapes and sizes. E. Cliff Stewart, production planning advisor who has over 30 plus years of experience in various roles as a supply chain practitioner and an SAP functional consultant implementing both demand planning and manufacturing solutions. Stephen Cannell, an integration advisor with 10 plus years of experience in the area of warehouse management. With that, I would like to hand the discussion over to Christy.
Welcome to our roundtable conversation on SAP IBP Sales and Operations Planning. Today, we will be discussing how Sales and Operations Planning module of SAP IBP can drive value as an asset when used to support your integrated business planning process. Whether you're just getting started on your journey, or you're well on your way and looking to level up, or you've been there, tried that, and have a few stars to prove it, this one's for you.
What we've done for today's conversation is gather several of our functional experts for a lively discussion and to see if we can answer some questions around IBP. My name is Stephen Kinnell, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. I'm joined by Christy Bain.
Hello.
E. Cliff Stewart.
Hi.
Before we get started, we should make one clarification. Christy?
Oh, yes. We found it a bit confusing when we were working through our last webinar in October, and we were referring to IBP, the process, versus IBP, the system and solution. That's doubly challenging today as we refer to IBP, the process or the solution, and S&OP, the process or the module within the IBP solution. We're going to try our very best to make it clear which we're talking about as we go, but just know going into it that we recognize that this may be confusing. Thank you, SAP, for all the great naming convention. Also, whether you're internally running an S&OP, sales inventory and operations planning, sales inventory resource operations planning, or integrated business planning process, the SAP S&OP module within SAP IBP is a strong enabler to all of the above variations. And yes, if you're looking for the benefits of DDMRP or DDS&OP, the IBP solution supports this world as well, but will be covered in conjunction with an S/4HANA landscape in a future webinar.
With that said, let's get started. So topic one, we all know that sales and operations planning is something we should be doing. Let's take a moment and talk about why. E. Cliff, let's start with you.
Well, Stephen, every organization desires to be the best in class for their industry. Unfortunately, their supply chain has multiple constraints, which can hamper this effort. Even if you have a lot of inventory, that doesn't mean you can provide the service levels which you need to be best in class. This is where sales and operation planning is a key activity for supply chain planning, which allows organizations to work towards a common set of goals and objectives in fulfilling customer needs at a high level of service while maximizing their profits.
I think one of the other benefits is the collaborative decision making. So I'm using the word collaborative rather than consensus. We've talked historically about consensus-based demand plans, but really across the entire sales and operations planning process, You're collaborating to make a good decision with the benefit of the whole in mind. So if we look at this slide, where we see functional views and traditional silos, really the goal of the sales and operations planning process is to start breaking those silos down and have good, productive, and integrated conversations across all of the different teams. We start to work more collaboratively, we drive good decisions, and then we have positive outcomes coming out of that process. I remember once speaking with a client who was talking about how sales and operations planning was going with their organization. And one of the things that they said through the course of that conversation that really stuck with me is that attending should never be the verb associated with this process, because attending is passive and never leads to alignment. So coming out of the sales and operations planning process and meeting, we want to know that people have participated, had the opportunity to collaborate, and the decision has been made.
Here I have some survey results from Supply Chain Insights. I have to be honest, I found these results really confusing. On one hand, 90% of the participants said they run S&OP on a monthly basis. 86% value S&OP as important to agility. 77% said they use some sort of S&OP software to support their process today. Those seem like positive results, right?
They do. It tells us that organizations feel that sales and operations planning is important enough that it's worth it to invest in software, likely with implementation services. That's a journey to embark on. It takes a lot of time and effort to get there, and it is a courageous step by an organization to go forward and make this type of commitment. It's even so important that they're investing these times and resources into conducting the sales and operations planning process on a monthly or quarterly basis, but maybe without the great results that they were hoping for. But they continue to keep them going anyway. And then if we ask the question as to why, it's because we know that in order to be competitive and have a competitive advantage, we need to have this as a way of making decisions and coming to a way of operating that aligns with our strategic goals. Integrated business planning or sales and operations planning can be your most valued process. It can be one of the things that truly energizes your organization and sets the heartbeat for what it is that we're doing and helps you to surface gaps and resolve them in productive ways. Or it can be one of your most expensive. The lack of cadence can breed chaos. So folks know that they need to do this on a regular basis, even when they're not seeing the results that they're hoping for. So the positive thing is we're recognizing it's important. We're doing it. We're spending the time and efforts to get there, and we're looking for agility coming out of this process.
Right, that's what I'm seeing as well. Only 46% believe their S&OP is effective. Only 37% believe it's balanced, and again, only 46% say they often execute the plan. I mean, can that be right? Does this surprise you?
Hey, these statistics don't surprise me. Given the effort it takes to complete an S&OP exercise, it's so prone to execution mistakes and containing or being included invalid data. Things like, did everyone involved in the process work with the same set of data and assumptions? Were key assumptions overlooked? This is a highly coordinated set of activities. They need to be executed in a particular step and requires input from multiple sources. And this is quite a challenge to complete successfully.
So let's talk about some of the why and how we might be able to resolve it through people, process, and the smart use of technology. So this picture here is from our friends at SAP. Here's some of what they think makes getting S&OP right so tricky. What do we think?
Well, we think, Stephen, that SAP has really started listening to their customers and clients, and has also brought in talent that understands some of the struggle in very real ways. This speaks to a few different key issues.
And to add to what Christy just stated, again, To assemble all this information required for a successful S&OP exercise, the data comes from multiple sources. This alone is quite a challenge. Combined with creating more than one scenarios, because as part of the S&OP process, we may want to consider 2 or 3 different scenarios. So when you take this all into consideration, that each scenario work with the right data set, how difficult was it to align all the data together? These are, the challenges involved with this.
Yeah, I think Eclipse too, when folks aren't fully engaged in or believe in the process, you see a lot of local optima driven by functional silos. When we're not invested in the same goal or problem statement, we tend to control what we can manage and do what we think is best in terms of our own team. So managing the issues of the day with the folks and the resources that we have and trying to get to the best outcome. Oftentimes, though, this has a conflict with what's best for the whole, right? We only see our particular piece of the puzzle in our daily operations because we know that we're coming out of sales and operations planning without the best information. One of the biggest complaints about sales and operations planning is that it's too slow and it's not nearly agile enough. We saw in the previous slide that the agility is really something that folks are looking for. People get hooked on this concept of monthly cycles, which are fed by weekly activities that then sometimes turn into just more of a monthly report out. This report out often loses its intended integrated approach and becomes a report wrong, or even worse, more of a phone-in with the metrics without meaning. And when we say metrics without meaning, we mean metrics that are either presented in isolation. So, for example, back orders are down. Okay, great. What's happening with sales this month? Oh, sales are also down. Maybe that's why back orders are down. Or maybe it's things that folks can't actually act on or don't know what they're supposed to do to correct. There's not the mitigation plan that we would be looking for to help close those gaps. Planning organizations frequently report the data gathering and maintenance is so time intensive that by the time we get to sales and operations planning, the actual executive review and report out, the information is outdated and it's no longer trusted. So we're producing a plan with outdated information that we can no longer act on. Further, because it takes so much time to actually go gather that data and be able to prepare it for the meeting, we lose the opportunity to provide the meaningful insight. And that effort is so significantly shorted that folks don't feel like they've actually had good positive impact in the process. As a result, people do what they do, which means that they do the best they can with what they have in the moment and what was previously agreed to in the meeting that happens once a month and then isn't followed is no longer actually creating a positive influence on the day-to-day operations. In addition, our executives don't understand why this isn't working, and they realize the process has become disjointed and the numbers can't be trusted. This frustration can turn to apathy, which then turns into energy loss and fatigue. People soon have a process that generates a plan that no one believes in, executes their values, is time intensive and costly, and then we have a process with no energy to actually fuel it. This struggle is real.
Okay. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit. How do you know if your S&OP is actually driving value? I see. We're going to talk about integration and alignment again.
Yes, we are. When we talk about driving value out of the sales and operations planning process, it's evident that the level of integration and alignment is what we're really experiencing and needing. Let's look at all of these different touch points with bidirectional arrows. Truly, if we want to get value from this process, we have to translate our goals and objectives into plans and activities supported by timely and aligned execution. We have to harness the value of our assets, which are our people, our process, and our technology, and they must all be in alignment. In order to be able to do this well, we have to take our business rules and our business behaviors and make sure that they are working together. So when we say this, we're talking about the way that we are informing our decision support system, like SAP, IBP, Sales and Operations Planning, and we're providing good information and inputs into it so that it can give us better predictive and quality results out. In order for this to be effective, our behaviors have to be in alignment with the rules that we're telling the system so that it can provide us with good advice and decision support for how we can move forward. Eclipse, do you have some examples maybe that you've heard of, or experienced yourself of what happens when these business rules and behaviors don't really align?
So definitely have experience when they're not in alignment. So the point is, when they're not in alignment, we get incorrect results from the S&OP exercise. And as a result of that, folks have to remember that the S&OP exercise ties into our financial targets. So when we are not in alignment, we end up with invalid financial targets. We are struggling to achieve quarterly targets, which are not valid to begin with. In addition to that, it also drives the forecast that we send to our manufacturing facilities. So as a result of incorrect S&OP results, we end up producing the wrong materials, the wrong product mix. We end up hurting our service commitment to our customers, and then we end up having to build excess inventories, end up with inventory write-offs and so forth. So these are definitely some of the significant consequences of misalignment that I have experienced over my career.
Awesome, thanks, Yusuf. So how can we utilize SAP IBP to ensure this is working? How can we utilize SAP's IBP S&OP as an actual asset? This looks like it speaks to some of the issues we were highlighting before. Tell me more about how SAP IBP's S&OP offering helps with some of the risks and points of frustration that we were discussing earlier.
So, Stephen, a key point of using IBP S&OP is the fact that it really simplifies through integration and tools the data collection effort. So we definitely need data from different areas, and by having stronger integration points with our execution systems, as well as tools that IBP provides, we can basically monitor exactly what's going on, what's the data provided in a timely manner. Folks don't have to be dedicated, right in front of the system. Literally, they can work offline, and as soon as they get back on the network, it syncs back to IBP, and we can get status reports. So between these type of monitors and tools, it just simplifies the process and really reduces the risk of any misalignment, missing data, and so forth, with the solution provided from S&OP IBP.
Yeah, I think one of the things that it does for us too, we talked about cadence breakdown or things taking too long or being stuck in kind of these monthly cycles. SAP IBP Sales and Operations Planning offering helps us with that through process governance, workflow, and collaboration. So if there is a situation that is coming up, we always know who has the baton and what the task is that's assigned. It's incredibly flexible in how you can make those assignments so that you can pass information through the process without missing a step or missing a person that should have been involved in adding qualitative input to the data and information that is already natively stored within the IBP solution. The other thing that's really important here is if we look across the bottom, we've got a number of steps that are highlighted. These all are representative of an overall process, and that is the way the framework for the system is intuitively built. So then depending on what the steps are that you really need to follow, you are able to go in and make this easy through developing that in IBP itself. Something else that is important to mention is that these plans have to go back somewhere to be executed. So SAP IBP solution is not intended for execution. So this is an opportunity to publish back and integrate with either ECC or S/4HANA. One of the thing we'll mention is that, through our talk today, we're really talking about integrating IBP with SAP ECC or S/4HANA, but it should be noted that IBP is also a standalone solution. So that being said, when you're thinking about what's happening in IBP versus the activities in your ERP environment, it's important for you to make sure that if you are not using SAP ECC or SAP S/4HANA, that you have another place for this information to go to be actually executed and transacted again. IBP is not intended for short-term finite scheduling, for example. This is supported via production planning or through production planning and detailed scheduling.
For those who tuned into our webinar last October, we provided an overview of the IBP solution, as well as the capabilities of ECC and S/4HANA. For those who are not aware, SAP IBP offers several different modules, but do these modules all flow into the S&OP?
So certainly, Stephen, they can. The idea here is that the sales and operations planning module is really your core hub that is taking care of that process flow for you and allowing you to make a fully informed decision, leveraging the information from the other modules. So in order to have a fully informed plan, the information needs to not only exist in those modules, but flow through to sales and operations planning so that you can finalize the plan and then publish it out to your execution system. There's also additional information for planning purposes that might either live directly in IBP or in another solution. So, for example, if you have financial targets coming from another system, perhaps you have customer-specific information, or you're even getting like a point of sale feed from your customer, you're able to pull all of that into IBP. IBP loves to integrate, so it's more than happy to take all of that information in so that you have everything that you need available in order to be able to drive good decisions and run simulations and scenarios.
So from a manufacturing perspective, we can have multiple sourcing. So the key point is we can do rapid capacity planning to determine which facility can best supply that inventory we need to fulfill customer requirements. So sometimes a particular manufacturing site could not fulfill all the inventory required in a timely manner. So we can do scenario planning. And the different scenarios can represent, sourcing from an alternative manufacturing site, or it could even be sourcing inventory from a subcontractor or vendor. So these are the different type of information that we can also flow into IBP, S&OP to then do various modeling to determine what best suits our objectives.
A couple of other things folks might not be aware of. So while there is a demand module specifically designed to help with any sophisticated forecasting and demand planning needs, we still also have great capabilities within the sales and operations planning module as well to produce a statistical forecast. So depending on what your needs are, there's flexibility in how you can roll out the entire IBP suite. And it's important to know that within the sales and operations planning module, you have the things that you need in order to be able to get this process up and running. Well, IBP is both a dual workspace, meaning that there are Fiori apps and an Excel front end. It makes the learning curve much less than, say, APO for a casual user. It's even something that we can use and share with our executive teams and managers because you're able to develop nice visualizations that will support your process. That being said, all of the power and capability that is needed for subject matter experts is still there within the system. It just has a more user-friendly approach. Folks see this and they go, oh, hey, it's in Excel. We're back to everybody's favorite planning tool. But it's important to understand it really is so much more than that, if that's not been evident through our conversation so far. So you still have the ability to put all these plans in motion, but you don't have to go outside the system to start generating reporting. So you can do this right within the tool. All the analytical capabilities live right within the IBP environment. And lastly, and we did talk about this the last time, it's important to not underestimate the decision support capabilities that include profitability analysis to help you identify and resolve gaps in your planning process.
Here are some examples of what we've been referring to today. These are capabilities that this module of IBP's purpose is built to support. How does this help people be more successful in having a successful S&OP process?
One of the things that I really like is that you know if the ball is in your court or not, or if the baton has been passed to you. So there's no more guessing on which plan is approved or which numbers are correct, or even where you are in the cycle. Like it's very clear at what stage we're in and what needs to be done. And we know that what we have sitting in our baseline version or published version is what we are going to be executing to. So if something does change off cycle, you have the ability to immediately pull people into that conversation and collaborate. And by this, I mean you can feed work to folks to have them participate in the conversation and drive the right decisions. So I think it feels a lot less like you're in the boat by yourself trying to manage and control, the information that's flowing across your plate. You have the ability to put people in at the right time. And something else that we've talked a little bit about today are, versions and scenarios and simulations. So Eclipse was saying earlier that, with the power of HANA, we're actually able to do some of this now in the room. So when we think about it, we can run a scenario on the fly using the master data that's associated with a particular version. We have the ability to have versions that have different master data in play. So let's say, for example, I think it's a great one. So everybody's talking about coronavirus right now and what kind of impact that's going to have on the supply chain. It's a really scary thing. Wouldn't it be nice to have a solution in place that has all of your resources, your financial targets, your current demand situation, how you're planning to supply, all in one location where you can go in and then make a copy of that, adjust it, run simulations to try to see what you can potentially do. And then you have a scenario for any potential outcome. So let's say, for example, I need to reduce my capacity in China by 30% for the next X number of weeks. I can go in, I can do that. I can see what kind of impact it's going to be, figure out how to solve that problem with the other resources that are available to me and what it really means to my business. And then at a time where that starts to improve, then I can go back to, quote unquote, normal. Something else we have are alerts. Very robust alerting is available within the solution. So you've got two different kinds that I will highlight today. The first is that within your Excel UI, you've got key performance indicators and situations that you would like to highlight. So let's say we have significant forecast variation and we want to go in and highlight that item to go in and fine tune the plan. I can see that visually, and I can also get alerts about it. Let's say we have a resource that is wildly under or over capacity. I can see that visually, or I can receive an actual alert notification. So we have alerts also within the Fiori app. So here I can set highly customizable alerts, and I can set them at a threshold that I am able to tackle and respond to. I think one of the biggest challenges is that folks get too many, and then it's hard for them to know what to do with them. This is also a highly visually oriented system. So you no longer have to leave your workspace to create reporting outside the system for your manager's manager. You can actually create some pretty nice custom dashboards right here in the solution. You can push those out to your manager's manager just like you would with a ClickView or a Tableau. And then you also have the ability within just your Excel workspace when you're in meetings to be able to have a visualization on the screen as far as what's happening with your plan. You also have a really tight feedback loop with your ERP system that helps activities stay in sync with one another, and it helps keep all of your data-driving decisions current, so people are walking to that same plan. So, and I'm saying walking because hopefully if you are committed to those plans at the time they're published and they're now real-time and relevant, master data rules, behaviors are aligned, folks can trust that plan and actually go forward and execute it in a smart way. And that is what is taking a lot of the fatigue and exhaustion out of the process and really offers us an opportunity to reinvigorate and re-engage with folks.
It sounds like a lot of the pain points are addressed. Can an organization just go for IBP tomorrow? So we know the answer is no. It's not as simple as going out and purchasing license for IBP. If it was that easy, then having an S&OP process in place that works wouldn't be such a competitive advantage. How does an organization know when they are ready?
So you're so correct, Stephen. For the way an organization know whether or not they're ready. They really, the point is the process is heavily dependent on the quality of information. So, the recommendation is before pursuing a technical solution, you really want to evaluate your data that's involved in the S&OP process. So just to basically identify if there's any gap or misalignment of the data. And for those data issues that has been identified, we then have to determine how to remediate this issue. So that's our recommendation, is to go down the path of saying, okay, let's evaluate all the data and let's identify how to fix it. The last thing you want to experience is implementation delays. It's no good having a technical solution when there's bad input going into that solution. And this is why focusing on the data quality is a key component in avoiding this type of risk.
I feel like to Eclipse's point, this is one of the most underappreciated legs. If you look at, an implementation plan for how you get from here to there, and we're talking about a technical plan that's driven by, quality of business information, that's usually where there's a heavier lift than folks are even anticipating. Like, even if we recognize that our master data quality and our housekeeping is not great today, it still don't appreciate fully what it takes in order to be able to get there tomorrow. So, and when we talk about housekeeping, so this is the quality of information in your system in terms of, is the information in my system valid? So, do I have the correct inventory balances? Are my purchase orders that I have in my system, do they align with what my supplier thinks that they're supposed to deliver? We have a good handshake in that information. So many different data points are relevant and important to our decision-making process, so ensuring that those are correct is super important and a big portion of getting from here to there. So I think the other thing that we have to really consider is whether we have an appetite for this. So for an organization to get a lot of value out of a solution like this, you're looking for that maturity level where you're sitting with good data, you've got business rules and behaviors that are aligned with the information that you're providing, the decision support solutions that has to understand how you're going to actually execute your operations in your business. And then you're ready to start having a good conversation around how to optimize those activities. So once you're there, that's usually the point at which you start to really have an appetite for investing in the technology and the resources available in order to do this. You have to build a strong coalition of folks who are motivated in the same ways and actively engaged. Are they ready to support this journey? And do they understand, what the advantages of this are supposed to be? The survey results that we saw earlier say that people understand what it's supposed to be, they're just struggling with how to get there. And I think a solution like SAP operations planning through IBP really helps with this. It starts to give us the building blocks that we need in order to reinvigorate this type of process.
With all that considered, how does one go about launching a project like this if they do have all the necessary buy-in? I assume they need an implementation partner?
I would say they need a really good implementation partner and possibly a trusted advisor to help with the process piece if that implementation partner is more technical. This is not an execution system. There is no, cookie cutter that gets us where we need to be. There's no silver bullet. This is a lot of conversation around your business, how you like to drive decisions, best practices, and how to bring that information and data together in order to support those conversations, and building the discipline and agility internally to be able to take a full advantage of an asset like this. So when we decide how this is going to work, we have to decide how we want to drive our decisions and then make sure that those decisions are in the right framework so that the system can be set up to accurately reflect and empower that. That being said, IBP can be technically implemented very quickly. And then the longer program where the solution continues to be built out through learning by doing with a trusted advisor can really help in driving the value out of the asset in the way that we would certainly see as a competitive advantage. So you get by with a little help from your friends.
So to Christie's point, the implementation of IBP S&OP solution is less than 30% of the overall schedule. The majority of the implementation effort really sits around clearly defining the S&OP process. And once you have clearly done so, the next step is really on educating the employees involved in the S&OP process. Having a strong education program, to build a solid foundation for continued growth, that's what we strive for, and that's what will allow your company to succeed with the implementation of IBP S&OP process and solution.
And I think it's worth mentioning again, knowing what IBP sales and operations planning should be handling versus what's managed in your ERP solution or even potentially within other IBP modules to help boost those particular functional areas as needed is very key. We've seen some companies that get into IBP and then they think, oh, maybe I can do all of my planning in IBP and not even have my planners working in ECC anymore, or vice versa. They put in IBP, but they're not quite sure how to use it. So they're mainly using it for financial reporting, and then they're using ECC for everything else. So, we want to make sure that we don't further build disjointed processes or disconnect. So if we can bring those things together and understand exactly which tool is right for which job, that really helps provide the consistency and the stability in the process that folks are looking for, and that consistency and stability helps us with agility. So sometimes they say moving slow is actually moving fast because you make less mistakes. In this case, moving consistently is moving fast because you have the ability to have that stability and confidence in what it is that you're doing. Remember that the solution is truly purpose-built. It's made for these types of activities. So, that is one of our very favorite things about it, is that it will help to drive sales and operations planning as an asset in your business, which is something that we know that we need to be able to do. Well, thank you, Christy, Eclipse, and Stephen. It looks like that is the end of our presentation for today. So we're going to jump right into some questions that came through. So the first one we have is, we've tried to get S&OP up and running, but it has not really gained the traction we were expecting. If you had to highlight one thing about this solution that would help us move forward, what would it be? I think that's a great question. It's exactly the core of what we're talking about today. I think if we had to say one thing, it would be the agility, giving people back the time they need in order to be able to add value to the process, because they are able to do things like evaluate a scenario, build and evaluate a scenario on the fly, have those conversations in the room, and then immediately go out and act on it. That really drives the value of not having, a latent process that's not keeping pace with the business. So I like it from the standpoint of agility. Okay, the next question that we have is, how flexible is IBP? We've had issues in the past with other systems where we couldn't really look at the data and the way we wanted to. Very flexible. One of the things that can be challenging with setting up the sales and operations planning process is that the way that we segment data in our ECC solution or S/4HANA solution, our ERP environments, is oftentimes driven off of a financial hierarchy, or customer hierarchies are separate. In IBP, we have the ability to add lots of different attributes, and those can exist specifically within IBP in order to power our process. So for sales and operations planning, when we need to be able to go through and take a look at that at different levels, we've got that flexibility that's necessary in order to be able to slice and dice in order to drive decisions at the right levels where we can have productive results. Is the optimization engine included in S&OP? That is a great question. I wonder if somebody has been aware of IBP for a long time, because I think there was a time at the very beginning where you were able to access the optimization engine through sales and operations planning. That is unfortunately no longer the case. That optimization engine lives in responsive supply, specifically within supply. And so when we're talking about optimization really in any of the areas, that's what those other functional pieces are for. So demand planning, has additional sophisticated capabilities specific to demand planning. Inventory optimization has an optimization engine for inventory and responsive supply. There's a supply engine for optimization within the supply module. The last question that we have today is, we already have IBP, but we're struggling. Are you available to have a direct conversation? We would love to have a direct conversation, absolutely. It's not uncommon in any rollout of a new solution to be struggling a little bit. So we'd love to have a further chat and see what we can do to maybe help you based on the experience of our clients and customers. And it looks like there were a few other questions for further information, but please reach out to the information that you see here, or we will reach out to you as well for the people that are remaining with questions. And I just want to say thank everybody for joining us today. This webinar will be available tomorrow on our website at revealvalue.com under the resources tab. And if you are interested in any of our previously recorded webinars, you can collect that information as well on the resources section of our website. We also have white papers, success stories, and other helpful tips and tools. Before you go, I just want to let you know that our next webinar takes place March 18th, 2020. Effectively identifying and measuring production throughput, and it will be presented by Sean Stokey. So with that said, an email will be sent out with the information well in advance, and we hope you have a great day, and thank you again for joining us.